Welcome back. Now we're going to talk something that is very important to a nation, and it's my pleasure to welcome the former Minister of Education, Obi Ezekwesili. Good morning.
Good morning, Alero. Good to see you.
No points for guessing what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about her passion, the educational system in Nigeria, which everyone says has fallen. But who is doing something about it? Is anyone looking at it? Lecturers have been on strike for the past 1 month. What is your thought about that? Did I say welcome to Sunrise? I'm so eager to get into the meat of this education.
I imagine. But, you know, even your opening question is an indication of the difficulty in having a conversation on education. Because, you know, sometimes you address the symptom, and yet the fundamentals are really the issue that you should be concerned about. Education is a system, and a system works organically. And if you don't understand what creates a dysfunction to a system, then you might see some things and you'd be addressing them, which would be akin to somebody who's got cancer having a very good time with paracetamol. That wouldn't be a solution. No, it would give you temporary relief or temporary reprieve, but it's not going to address your fundamental problem. So when you say who is doing something about education, you're basically saying what's the governance system for education. Education falls within the concurrent list of our Constitution, which means that it is an activity in which the federal government, the state governments, and the local governments have right to embarking on programs. The federal government, through the Ministry of Education, the Federal Ministry of Education, is the policy leader, policy formulation leader for education. Implements those policies, monitors those policies, and then is a regulator of some standard setting and benchmarking for performance. In terms of who is doing something for education, everybody is doing one thing or the other for education. Everybody in terms of the government, but also in terms of the private sector. And so at the different levels of education, including our tertiary education, you can see that you've got private players. So everybody is doing one thing or the other. The real question that you should be asking is everyone doing what needs to be done?
Okay, now if we want to start then, let us not focus on are they doing what they need to be done, because it's obvious that they're not doing it. And that's why we have the strikes. That's why the quality of the graduates we bring out, that's why there is a problem with it. But let me start with what some cynics and some people in the corridors of power have been saying when they look at someone like you, who is very vocal and who is speaking what some of us believe is your heart. The question they're asking is, when she was there, what did she do?
And the question I would throw back at them, you probably must have been sleeping when... No, it's very true. Because anyone who followed the reform in education, the reform program in education, would never ask that question. That's really the truth. And I'm not one for being so taken in by the things. I don't engage in self-adulation one bit. Education mandate, when I was minister, I guess it was one of the most difficult assignments that I had to do in government. And to see through very profound analysis of what the situation was with the sector and the system, to see that it was broken down. When I was Minister of Solid Minerals, the number of reforms that through diagnostics we found we needed to do in order to set the system fully okay and on a credible path for performance was 107 reforms. when I got to education, we used the same kind of diagnostics to really understand the system. In other words, if you want to solve a problem, it has to be evidence-based approach. And when we did that, in the case of education, it was more than 300 items of work that we needed to do. By the time I was leaving the education ministry, some 45% of what we needed to do. And, by the way, guys, I was in education for 10 months. But I didn't work as a minister for 10 months. I worked, 10 months became 3 years in terms of the volume of work. Because the team that we assembled and the kind of use of time, I would go to work. I would start off work at 7 a.m. and I would leave office at an average of 2 a.m. for the 10 months that I was in education. So the product of our reform effort was not the product of somebody who was 10 months. So really, I shouldn't waste my time answering this kind of question. It's so irrelevant.
Yes. Now, when we look at that, the result of that reform, do you see it being implemented today?
One of the things that surprises me about our society is how the citizens almost, there is this selective amnesia that happens across board. It's not just with the leaders. The citizens ask you a question, so what's going on with those reforms? No, you shouldn't be asking me. I should be asking you as a citizen, because you ought to have followed the reforms and been able to say that nothing should have changed, anything that was important to keep. The first thing that I heard after I left government was being told that my successor's mantra was to reform Ezekwesili's reform. There's laughing about it is not even right, because I felt so sorry for the children of the poor. Because, how can you politicize education reforms? The reality, Alero and Kayode, is that education is a dysfunction at the moment. It's in a dysfunctional state. And so everything that you needed to think through, it was a comprehensive reform. That's why the number of measures we needed to take was way above 300 measures, very significant measures. All of those ideas based on evidence-driven policy laid out. Initially,